Welcome. I'm excited to bring you today an incredible piece of U.S. military aviation history. This episode will come to you in 4 parts. First, I'll cover the history and background of the event depicted. Second, I have an incredibly informative interview with an individual who is an aircrew and participated in this program. Third, I'll walk you through my art process, including a quick time lapse of the painting going on the canvas. Fourth, I'll have the art professionally critiqued, debriefed, if you will, by a pro. So what brought these two legendary aircraft, the F-14 and the Mig-21, to the same piece of sky, locked in combat? And who are these guys? Stay with me. This is an incredible story.
I'm Crew Frankenberger, and this is Brush with Flight. No, I've never been to Navy Fighter Weapons School, and no, I've never been to art school. But that's never stopped me. Let's go. 3, 2, 1, ha!
In the summer of 1984, at the height of the Cold War, an epic aerial engagement would take place between a U.S. Navy F-14 Tomcat and a Russian Mig-21 Fishbed. Two Navy fighter pilot legends, Dale Snodgrass and James Rookie Robb, were participating in a top-secret, clandestine black program known as Constant Peg. With the Air Force as the lead service, the Constant Peg program would rise from the dirt and dust of the Tonopah, Nevada desert and put in place a fully functioning squadron of MiG-17, MiG-21, and MiG-23 aircraft. At that time, the Farmer, Fishbed, and Flogger were the mainstays of the Soviet Air Force and that of many Soviet client states. And with the stand-up of Constant Peg, they became a mainstay of the United States military adversary program, often flying an 8-turn-8 schedule 4 days a week. From 1978 to 1989, the Red Eagles, as they were known, gave U.S. pilots invaluable exposure and experience in how to fight the actual threat aircraft of that era. The value of this audacious program cannot be understated. In the engagement that ensued, the two pilots battled through the sky in a fully mature furball. The outcome of the engagement remained uncertain until a decisive move resulted in a tracking guns kill for one of our legends. Dale Snodgrass and his F-14 had a trick up his sleeve and would rule the day. This is the subject of my next painting, capturing the moment when victory was assured in 1984 in the clear blue skies somewhere north of Vegas. I'm Kurt Frankenberger, call sign Webster, and this is Brush with Flight.
Well, all right. That was kind of fun. That was me trying to do a little Top Gun-esque intro. I apologize for the over-dramatization there. That's what I learned when I did go through the adversary course there. I got exposed to all the Top Gun lectures that they had there. And former squadron of mine, Toast Bernie, did an awesome job laying out his GBU laser-guided bomb lecture that he gave out there. So that was a Top Gun-esque. That's the best you're going to get from me. And I probably shouldn't have tried it at all. But moving on to the subject today. This painting is going to involve both an F-14 and a MiG-21. Everybody's pretty well familiar with the F-14. Seen them all over the place. They're everywhere. Anyway, MiG-21s are not quite everywhere. I had a suspicion that there was one out fairly near where I'm at here in Las Vegas. That'd be at Nellis Air Force Base. Did a little Google world search there, and sure enough, there's one sitting out right in front of the 64th Adversary Squadron. So I decided to take a little field trip, take a little walk around there. So let's go take a look. So here it is, in front of the 64th. The MiG-21 has always been a favorite airplane of mine. It has such clean lines, it looks fast, and it is fast. This is the 2.1 Mach airplane. The pilots at Constant Peg really enjoyed flying this airplane. They commented that it was fast, and in the slow speed environment in particular, it was very maneuverable. This aircraft here is believed to be one of the early MiG-21s that the Constant Beg program obtained. Probably not in this paint scheme, and not with the number 64 on it. This aircraft can be identified as one of the early model MiG-21s. Underneath the nose, you'd have a probe that would have extended out 3 to 4 feet. That probably was removed so people wouldn't run into it. Underneath the six there, you have the blast plate and the single internal 30mm cannon. Additionally, the dorsal ridge is fairly small on this airplane. Take a look at the canopy there. Probably reasonable forward visibility, but aft visibility is not great, but probably similar to an F5, but nothing like an F-16 bubble canopy, no doubt. This airplane has a AA-2 ATOL missile, might also be carrying an AFID, and these are early generation IR missiles, and it should be just a rear quarter only shot capability with those. The wing is very identifiable with this delta shape. It comes almost to a point out there at the tip. It's great for moving fast, but not great for turning performance at high speed and high G. Once you get in that high speed, high G environment, it bleeds off airspeed really fast. It also has the stall fences, which were popular in Soviet aircraft at that time, to try and help manage transverse flow and wingtip stall characteristics. And also back here, you see a fairly large rudder. People don't normally associate jet flying with a lot of utilization of the rudder because we don't have a prop, obviously. But at high angle attack maneuvering, you're going to use that rudder quite a bit. The rudder will introduce a little bit of yaw, and a little bit of yaw will move that wing forward and create some roll for you. If you were to use just strictly aileron, what you're going to get is a likelihood of a departure. So at high angle attack maneuvering, you're going to be using quite a bit of rudder. You may even be keeping the aileron centered while you're maneuvering the nose with some rudder. One of the great advantages of this airplane is its size. From the nose on, can you just imagine trying to see this airplane at a mile away? Even if you knew exactly where to look, a mile away, this is going to be very difficult to see. The other unique feature of the MiG-21 is the inlet spike. The inlet spike is in place in order to manage the airflow as the airplane transitions from subsonic to supersonic and on out as it proceeds into higher Mach numbers. The spike will come out further, trying to manage the airflow going down the intake to a subsonic continuous flow. Other aircraft that have this notably are the SR-71. As you can see, there's not going to be a lot of room in there for radar. So in the future, you're not going to see these inlet spikes like this on the nose, as the airplanes need all that room for a radar. This aircraft, as it sits, looks like it's configured with a drop tank. That drop tank, however, doesn't look like it's much suitable for maneuvering, if you asked me. I'm going to guess that's a ferry and logistics flight purposes only kind of drop tank. Don't see them on the airplanes very often sitting on the line. That's going to about wrap up the walk around of MiG-21. And it looks like I was able to pick the only day in Las Vegas where the sun wasn't shining. Better luck next time. All right, so I'm back in the studio here. Worked up a little fighter comparison chart. We'll take a look at both the fighters, the F-14 and the MiG-21. In the first two categories, it's really obvious that the F-14 is just a much larger airplane. Gross weight 3 times the gross weight of the MiG-21. Thrust, Termansky's not looking too bad with 12,655 pounds. The TF-30 for this much larger airplane is putting out 20.9. TF-30 is just not my favorite engine. That engine is prone to coughing, stalling, and just behaving pretty poorly when you're conducting any medium to hard maneuvering combined with moving the throttle. So you'd essentially have to stick it up there at mill or stick it up there at zone 5, or you ran the risk of stalling the motor while you're in the middle of a fight. And it's definitely tough to fight with a stalled motor. In the early 90s, thank goodness they replaced that TF30, and we brought in the GE F-110 motor. That motor was fantastic. It had smooth power, it responded really well, and at sea level, at 0.9 Mach, it would give you almost 30,000 pounds of thrust, so it's nearly like adding a third motor on the airplane. It was just absolutely terrific, and we really liked that motor in the F-14Bs and Ds. All this cooks out to a thrust-to-weight ratio calculation. As you can see, the MiG-21 is checking in at 0.87, and the Tomcat at 0.78. Of note, both of these are below a 1-to-1 thrust-to-weight ratio. And what that means in the fight is you always have to preserve a certain amount of airspeed to have the option for a vertical move. If you have a 1-to-1 thrust-to-weight ratio, you can take whatever airspeed you've got and work yourself straight nose high, and the airplane will keep flying for you. But today, neither of these aircraft have that, and that's going to come into play. Max speed, advantage is going to go to Tomcat on paper anyway, 2.34, and the Fishbed is Mach 2.04 aircraft. Difference being, the Fishbed is a very clean airplane. There's very little parasite and form drag on it. So when he does push it up to try and get some airspeed, he accelerates very quickly. The Tomcat is not going to accelerate like a MiG-21. Weapons, obviously the Tomcat's equipped with with a very formidable arsenal of weapons. The AIM-54, long range, AIM-7, medium to long, AIM-9 is your infrared seeking missile, and it's got the 20 millimeter Vulcan cannon, the M61. Over on the Fishbed side, we've got two IR missiles, the ATOL and the AFID, and the gun it's equipped with is a single 30 millimeter cannon. Today's going to be basically a within visual range event that we're going to be talking about. So these long range missiles are not going to come into play. And what is going to come into play is the AIM-9, which is going to be simulated with a CATM-9, which is commonly known as a blue tube. On the front end, the seeker head is everything a normal missile would be, and everything behind the seeker head is just a dummy. Advantages: the sustained turn rate for the Tomcat with the variable geometry wing is going to allow it to maintain a decent turn rate, decent lift production with limited bleed rates of airspeed. Weapon systems, obviously an advantage as well. And over to the Fishbed side, size is a significant advantage. It's very small, hard to keep track of. There's the old adage of lose sight, lose the fight. And if you can't keep track of your opponent, you're going to be in trouble. So you're going to waste a lot of brain cells throughout an engagement with a MiG-21 just trying to keep sight of him. Speed we talked about, acceleration rate is very impressive. Slow speed maneuvering, it keeps the nose up real nice, which is going to be really important as you're conducting a slow fight. On the disadvantage side, talked about the size already. Nobody loses sight of a Tomcat, so that's going to be a disadvantage for the Tomcat there. Roll rate, both of these are not overly impressive in roll rate, from about the 180 to 210 degree per second kind of roll rate, with the advantage definitely going to the MiG-21. But neither of these aircraft can hold a candle to the undisputed roll rate champion, the A4 that used to fly, checking in at 720 degrees per second. On the disadvantage side, that delta wing on that MiG-21 is just not efficient. That's going to cause a lot of bleed rates as he's doing any hard maneuvering. The weapon system is obviously limiting as well. And then the aft visibility. It's very difficult to see aft out of that cockpit with that bulkhead up right behind you. And that may come into play later on as we see today. That's going to wrap up the fighter comparison.
As I've alluded to, both pilots would go on to become Navy fighter pilot legends. Both were of the very first classes to enter the F-14 Fleet Replacement Squadron straight from flight training. Both would accumulate over 1,000 carrier-arrested landings. Dale Snodgrass would be instrumental in bootstrapping the Air Force's Lanner pod onto the F-14 airframe. This would give the F-14 the capability to drop laser guided bombs. and it would also give the Air Wing 2 more strike fighter squadrons than it had previously. And need I mention the banana pass photo? Aircraft carrier. Look familiar? Captain Dale Snodgrass. Jim Rookie Robb would be one of the first crew to go through the Top Gun in the F-14. Additionally, as we just covered, he was Bandit 38 of the 4477 Test and Evaluation Squadron. He retired at the rank of Rear Admiral. Most importantly, though, he was my DCAG in CAG 11 on the USS Enterprise. Life on the ship as a fighter pilot can have its moments. So I was a young, maybe 25-year-old F-14 pilot on his first deployment. At some point along there, I got assigned to do a threat capabilities brief for the Mig-21. I thought, okay, I like that aircraft. It's cool. So I was doing some research, looking around and whatnot, talking to people, and some guy told me, hey, Commander Robb, DCAG, flew MiG-21s. I was like, huh, that's cool. I'll go get some information. So there I was, up on FOD walk down. That's where we all get in a big line, and we walk along the flight deck, picking up any rocks or nuggets or screws or whatever we can find. And I see DCAG standing over there. So I take a walk on over. I say, hey, DCAG, sir, I'm putting together a brief on the MiG-21. So I'm trying to get some more information on how that aircraft performed. And I heard you were actually flying the MiG-21. He kind of looked at me and he's like, where did you hear that? I'm like, babada, babada, babada. Just words, sir. And he immediately kind of backed off, though. But for a moment there, I thought I was having one of those I could tell you, but I got to kill you moments. But he did help me out. He ended up telling me, hey, now is this for you to learn how to give a brief, or is this for you to brief actual information that for your squadron there? I said, well, it's probably both of those. I get it. So he did go on and give me a lot of information on how the aircraft performed, how I liked flying it, what kind of maneuvers he did with it, and I kind of got away with that. So anyway, that's life on the ship when a Nugget F-14 pilot, I don't know, I was probably still a Lieutenant JG, walks up and blunders into a top secret black program and has no clue. But it worked out. I got a good brief out of it, and it worked. So that was my moment with Rookie Robb, and I really appreciate how he handled that as well. Okay, so we're going to get right to the heart of the matter here. What I'm going to try to do is recreate that event that happened between Rookie and Snort out there in the desert. And the only information I really have on that has come from the book, Red Eagles, America's Secret MiG Squadron, where Rookie covers his account of what occurred out there with Snort. Outside of that, I'm also going to use my knowledge of the F-14A and also the A-4. The A-4 apparently flies very similar to the MiG-21 in the slow speed environment. So putting those two things together, I'll try to fill the gaps and build what I think is a plausible event that occurred. I want to warn you straight up, there's going to be whiteboard work and there's going to be some model work. I haven't done that in 20 years, so let's see what happens. Hold on to your hats. Initially looking at the board here, the setup we got going on here is Rookie in red in his MiG-21, Snort blue, F-14. Pads for the event are going to be a 20,000 foot altitude, 1 mile beam. Whoa, now wait a minute. This is what took all the fun out of flying fighters. So I'm going to turn it up to at least double speed. I'm going to voice over it and see if I can hang with that. Speed angels left, speed angels right. Take a cutaway. Turn it in. Tally ho. right to right. Wings level behind the wing line. Fight's on. Okay, we're moving this over right onto frame number 1. We got a right to right pass. Both airplanes have a lot of energy. We're going to turn across each other's tail in 2-circle flow. Tomcat's going to go around, sustaining energy. A little bit of nose low turn. Keep it a good sustained turn rate going. Mig-21, bleed, 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 bleed. Losing a lot of energy, digging nose low. Coming back around for a second merge. So the big difference between this first merge and this second merge is airspeed. Snort in his F-14 is probably somewhere close to 300, 350 knots. And Rookie in his MiG-21 has bled all the way through that turn. He's probably down somewhere below 250 knots. Game plans are starting to get established. Snort is probably going to just continue this game plan because at this point, he's going to start eating him up on the rate fight. So indeed he does. We're back in the 2-circle flow. Rookie goes along with it initially just to make sure that it's established. Then he's going to come with a hard reversal, nose low, try to cut across the circle, down underneath, inside the F-14's turning circle. He's bled a lot of energy to do this, and now he's going to come up and attempt to look as intimidating as possible. Snort knows he has airspeed on his side, and he's going to have a game plan to use it. And that's coming up in the next frame. So the game plans are really starting to show themselves here in frame number 3. Snort, plus 300 knots, continues his turn. Rookie, probably less than 200 knots, doing all he can do to intimidate Snort. What Rookie wants to see happen is Snort reverse right here and take himself into a flat scissors, rolling scissors type fight. Snort has the energy though, and he knows that's not the game he wants to play here today. He's going to pull the nose up, straight vertical, and extend out, utilizing the turning room that the vertical is going to offer him. The best thing that Rookie can do is try to maneuver himself underneath Snort. So as you can see now, we have both a vertical and horizontal fight going on the board, and that's going to be impossible to draw. So guess what? We're going to models. All right, so here we are. We got a couple models, so we can do a little model work. We have an F-14. Snort's going to be flying his F-14. And today we have an F-5. I don't have a MiG-21, so we're just going to have to simulate with an F-5 today, Rookie flying his MiG-21. We're going to pick this up where we left off from the board work. We had Rookie coming across low across the circle, bled a lot of energy, trying to intimidate. We have Snort, manages energy well, out in front, looks defensive, but knows he's got an airspeed advantage here. What he's going to do, level his wings, start bringing the nose up. He's going to pull that nose up until he is pure vertical. Okay, once Snort is into pure vertical here, he's got an option to unload right here and extend and try to get more separation. Or if he doesn't have the airspeed for that, he's probably just going to have to keep the nose coming around. So he'll keep the G on, keep the nose coming around. As it gets to about 10 to 15 degrees above the horizon, he's going to use the very large horizontal stabilizers on the F-14 to pitch pulse. He's going to pull that stick right back in his lap, and the nose will come pitching down to about here. Then he's going to ease the G, roll the airplane, utilize the lift vector placement, put it where it needs to be, and then start accelerating again. As he continues down in this maneuver, he's going to put some G on the airplane and start rounding out the bottom of that turn. Rookie, on the other hand, as he's seen this coming around, has seen this fight happen before, just similar to this. So what he's going to do, he's going to execute a high G roll over the top with whatever speed and G he's got available left in the airplane. Pull the nose up, back and into, rolling, dropping the flaps, standing it up on the tail, getting as slow as he can, trying to limit that downrange travel. Snort is going to visually follow Rookie through his high G roll over the top. And in the meantime, he sees he's in a good position here. And he's going to continue to pull the nose up, take it up 30, 40 degrees. At that point, he's going to unload. And the decisive move of the day, kind of the secret that we talked about earlier, he's going to drop the main flaps. Now the main flaps are not normally used for maneuvering, and it was technically a prohibited maneuver. But if you're going to do it, you're going to do it on the day you're fighting a Mig-21 that your buddy's flying. So down come the big boys. He's going to plug in the afterburner and stand the nose up. He's going to get a lot of lift from the fuselage. He's going to get plenty of lift from the wings with his flaps deployed, and he's going to get a component of thrust, keeping him in the air. So he's going to get super slow down here. His downrange travel is getting down near nothing. All the while, Rookie is looking for him to come out the other side. What he expected to have happen was Snort to extend out down here where he'd roll back around it. Didn't happen that way. So in the meantime, while he's looking and checking, Snort is climbing, and getting himself into a firing position here. Eventually, Rookie's going to keep that turn coming, and then he's going to see Snort at that point. Snort is going to take a little rudder, because that's how you fly the airplane when you're this slow. Kick some left rudder, get the right wing coming forward, get the plane rolling, and then he's going to kick it back the other way. Right rudder, plane's going to flow back around, and he's going to start aligning the fuselages. As he does this, he's going to start easing the G to keep the nose from wandering around. As the pipper gets right up to the front of the airplane, he's going to call trigger down, track, drift it all the way to the aft of the airplane, let off the trigger, half a second later, kill Mig-21. I don't know if that's exactly what happened. That's how I'm putting it together, though, based on the knowledge I have of both these airplanes, how they fly, and the coverage that Rookie Robb gave in his report. Well, I hope you all survived my modeling and board work. An awful lot of that goes on in fighter aviation. I'm going to move on to a segment I call There I Was. I have a terrific interview lined up for you. Here we go. I'd like to welcome a good friend of mine, and today's guest is retired commander, Captain Select Doug Boog Deneny. Boog, I just want to ask you, you make a couple wrong turns today, you end up on an art show. You know it's an art show, right?
It's an art show and it's beautiful art.
It's an art show and it's art in progress. There ain't no doubt about that. Let's see. If you don't mind, I'm going to knock a little thumbnail out on your career. Does that sound all right?
Sounds great.
Boog Deneny is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy of 1984. He went on to NFO training and then on to the F-14 FRS and was designated Radar Intercept Officer. Boog is a Top Gun graduate and in fact also a Top Gun instructor. In 1996, he was selected as the Pacific Fleet Rio of the Year. He served as the XO and the CO of Fighter Squadron 2, Bounty Hunters, and they transitioned on to VFA2, transitioning from the F-14D over to the F-18F. And that was the last deployment of the F-14D that we were both on there. On that deployment, Boog saw significant combat operations in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Boog's awards, let's just say too numerous to list here. We'll just cap it off with the Distinguished Flying Cross. Boog earned his Distinguished Flying Cross with his trusted pilot on the first night of Operation Iraqi Freedom for conspicuous gallantry while waltzing through the Iraqi supermez and engaging ground targets in southern Baghdad with multiple 2,000-pound JDAM. Boog, is that what that said? Waltzing through the supermez?
I don't think we were waltzing, Webster. And if people missed that, Webster was the pilot of that mission. And I think if you were waltzing, I was scared.
Yeah, that makes two of us. I've quipped before that if high, fast, and scared is distinguished, I was doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not forget that we were just us and our division and some great F-16 CJs that came in, and no one was talking to us. We could go on and on about that mission, but it's go time, and we were you and I made some great decisions there, and obviously we accomplished the mission and got back safely. And you just did an amazing job, Webster, and people don't know that about you, but it was an honor to fly with you for for years there. So
Well,
back over.
thanks, Boog. It was my pleasure as well. And hey, man, you put the carrot out in front of me and I'll go follow it, man, just like a rabbit. So we took care of things. I appreciated flying with you. I enjoyed it quite a lot, quite honestly. So yeah, we spent, let's see, that whole cruise, I was 6 feet in front of you when we were flying, and I was in your hip pocket when we were on the ground as your admin officer. So we spent a lot of time together. But anyway, let's see, waltzing through the super mez. Do you think that's a good name for a painting?
Ooh, that would be
Yeah.
good. Or shucking and jiving through a super mez.
People that have followed this video up to this point know a lot about constant peg. I covered it quite a bit. So Boog's piece in this is the fact that he actually participated in constant peg from the blue side in an F-14. So that piece of experience and how that went for you is kind of what I'm looking at to round out this this painting for me. So I'll ask a question here. It's the late 80s, the height of the Cold War with Russia. Now, where were you career-wise, squadron-wise, and kind of how'd you find out that you were going to be participating in this?
Yeah. So I was a lieutenant in the Navy, and I was probably the year was 1987. So I had been in my fleet squadron for just a little over a year. And we did a cruise off the John F. Kennedy and Med cruise, like you said, the height of the Cold War. A lot of tension, a lot of Libya tension as well too, and they were flying MiG-23s, and we got to see the MiG-21 briefly off of Egypt. We did something, but long story short, about a year and a half, one cruise under my belt, and we were on our Fallon air wing det, and I knew nothing about constant peg until we got to Fallon, and that was probably about, let's just say the spring of '87, roughly.
So your OPSO comes up and taps you on the shoulder and say, hey, we got a deal for you.
Yep. So it was set up for us being out there. It was surprised on us. We didn't know anything about it.
Oh, you didn't know anything about it?
Yeah, because it was back. It's not classified now, obviously. Back then it was classified. So
right.
If I remember correctly, all of us that were out there went through one sortie at that time. And
Okay.
so we were brought into a room, classified space, and said, hey, there's a program and you're going to fly up against them while you're at Fallon, and here are the details. And I think they actually did went through and did a brief with one of the pilots, drove up from
okay, gotcha.
From that area, drove up and kind of gave us a brief and said, here's all the rules. First of all, he signed the papers. They would talk about it till it's declassified, and then we actually, I think, cleared our face-to-face training rules brief in person.
Okay, so they brought someone up to handle that.
Yeah, so I think they handled all of that there, and then said things for us to watch out for, which is you don't say the word MiG over the radio. It's a F4 or I can't remember what the
right. Yeah, I think they covered with F5 for most of it.
Yeah, F5, F4. F4 was a MiG-23. F5, I think, was a MiG-21.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So you had a little bit of a read-in, obviously, before you went out there. So it wasn't just, hey, we're coming to the merge and whoa, what's that?
Right.
That would have tipped off some radio comms that probably wouldn't have been right. So that makes sense. How did the flight go down? I think maybe they did performance demos, things like that. And then what kind of engagements did they set up?
Yeah. So they told us basically go to this warning area, or I should say a restricted area, and you'll be up on the northern cap at a certain time. And if you're not there, they basically said due to the gas restrictions, you're going to miss the sortie. So be there early and wait. Right. So off we went to the northern, let's just say the northern cap there in central Nevada. And we got a call, and they, of course, didn't have good radars, but we did. And so they did not tell us in the brief what we were going to see. And so I think the neat thing about that is you have a game plan of what you're going to fight either against a MiG-23 or a MiG-21. And that first engagement was a turning fight. And so the pucker factor of, as we all know, not knowing what you're going to see at the merge. And I think they also asked us not to use our television camera system, our TCS. So we would not know until we got to the merge what we were dealing with. So, and it was that, so that first turn was full on. It was great, right? It was epic, right? As far as
Yeah,
training.
no doubt, no doubt.
You don't know, you've never, well, I'd seen a flash of some MiG-21s, but never seen a MiG-23. And that was, I still remember, I think both of mine were MiG-23s.
So you hit a merge with a MiG-23.
Yes. So remember
And
too, these are flown by highly trained Air Force and or Navy fighter pilots.
yeah, that do ACM three
All
times
the
a
time.
day, 4
Yep.
days a week at least.
Yep. But we
Yeah.
were able, the Tomcat against both of those, if it's flown well, you can do well against both of those. The MiG-23 obviously hit us. I don't remember the airspeed, but I'm sure the merge, we both probably hit it at, you know, combined close to 1,000 knots, right? So we were full blow. And we went vertical. He did, if I remember correctly, I still remember, you know, that one big MiG-23 turn, and then turned with us a little bit. And of course, is lovers of aviation know the MiG-23 is not known for its turning performance.
Right,
It's
right.
known for its ability to leave a fight. So we did well because he had to position his wings, you know, all those things the MiG-23 has to do. So I
Right.
think we did well on that one. And then
Okay.
from that point, we set up for visual recce type of thing, but we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, yeah. So that first, he does go with stays engaged. He doesn't try to exit the fight.
Correct.
And the Tomcat does a good job of that. And then you're going to set up for some visuals with the same guy?
Exactly. So then it's
Okay.
like, then it's kind of like, okay, you know, obviously you knock it off. And then that instructor pretty much commanded our actions from that point forward. You know, he would say things like, okay, enter an easy left-hand turn. He would join up on his air-to-air TACAN. So we would set up our air-to-air TACAN, and just like for those of you who are familiar with those sets back in the days, we didn't eyeball calibration is what he was trying to do next, which
Okay,
is
great. Right. Yeah.
realizing how small a MiG-23 is.
Right. You do like here's a mile, top and bottom, here's 3/4 mile, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay.
And then if I remember correctly, as he comes all the way in, the perception is you're, you know, 0.3, 0.2, and he's joining up, and it's small. I mean, it's a small airplane. And so that was what he really wanted to show. And I think also somewhere in there was an example of what he looks like nose on, like in a mile. And just like you, Webster, you have thousands of hours as a, not only fighter pilot, but as an adversary. You flew a lot in the A4. You put the guy right on your nose, and he or she, you know, becomes invisible almost.
Yeah, yeah.
2 miles away. So I think there was a little bit of that, like, hey, you know, this is a small airplane and nose on. It's going to be really.
Right. As I termed it in my fighter comparison piece just a little bit ago, poof is the word I use.
Yep.
Bird nose on at about a mile. He's gone, man. You got to keep track of that guy.
Yeah. And then if I remember correctly, we did some offensive and defensive sets. And what was neat about that, so this is a training event, right? This is pure training, and this person ran the show. And on the offensive and defensive sets, he of course had to position his wings, and he would call out his airspeed. And so we would see the, you know, holy smokes, he's beat down, just like anything, Webster, as you and your audience knows. Once you don't have a perception how slow that person really is unless you hear it. So the advantageous course of the Tomcat with the TF-30s then was go vertical, and you can do quite well in an offensive set when they're beat down. But then he did show us going away too. I think if I remember correctly, he gave the demo of, you know, how this thing can get up and go, you know, and leave a fight.
So the MiG-23 didn't have the wing efficiency either. Of course, the MiG-21 does not with a delta wing. That's going to bleed horribly. And the 23, even with its variable wings, they're just not efficient enough to keep some turn rate going. So it's going to bleed down bad too, huh?
But there are challenges with them repositioning their wings under G. Not everything is perfect, right? It's not like what we had with with our wing sweep motors.
A little more clunky. Yeah. That's what I remember the briefing saying about the 23. So, but I do remember also they said it really hauled. It got going fast and getting there quick. Did you do it like an acceleration demo or anything like that?
Now that you say that, I think that's the case. It was probably a drag race, right? A beam in
Okay.
both zone 5 for the Tomcat, and he can accelerate out. Yeah, I think it was a true Mach 2 fighter. It's been a while, obviously, but
Yeah, my readings, that's what I get. It would actually get there and have more engine left, but you had to stop it. So unlike us, we were fighting to get there in the
right.
Tomcat. So value of the program then. After you finished it, did you walk away? How'd you feel walking away from it?
It was phenomenal. Like I remember, we're all just like, wow. First of all, that our nation had that capability to do that, and secondly, as you know, DACT, dissimilar air combat training, is so much more valuable than going out and fighting your wingman. Once you get to a certain level of expertise, obviously fighting your wingman is important, and then fighting the A4, you get to know that. And even the Kafir, we would fly against in VF-43 at Oceana. We fly against the Kafirs.
Right. Yeah, you got to know what your fight's going to be.
Yeah.
There's differences in airplanes. You got to know what your good game plan is going to be.
Yep.
I mean, when I was flying A4s, that's exactly what we showed them. Like, you stay in my game plan, good luck.
Good luck. 720 degrees per second roll rate, right?
And it was so obvious when somebody knew what their game plan was. And I'm like, geez, okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm had.
Yeah.
Anything else about the experience you'd want to throw out there?
It was awesome. I think particularly since we were concerned about the Libya threat and seeing the MiG-23. And obviously on my second deployment in '89, I was there. Our sister squadron shot down 2 MiG-23s off of Libya. So
is that you were on that ship on that deployment?
Yeah,
okay, sure was. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's a whole nother set of stories I want to go into.
I know. I remember the Top Gun guys came around and debriefed that one. So
yeah. So that's '89, and we had done 2 constant peg sorties against MiG-23s, and so think about connecting that value where we knew if we went up against
absolutely. Yeah, that's terrific knowledge to have walking into a game like that. There's no doubt. So my experience was much more limited. I got to go to what they call the petting zoo out in Nellis.
Sure.
And this is when I went through the FRS. The program had basically just wrapped up. And so I'm walking around looking at these airplanes, and I'm like, damn, man, we ought to be flying these. Brilliant, Webster. Brilliant.
You're very astute. You put 2 and 2 together.
That's pretty sharp, man. Someone ought to start a program.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my piece of the experience there. That's about it. I think I'm wrapping up on this as far as your experience with Constant Peg, and it's really awesome, man. What a great opportunity for training, and I wish I'd had something like that. How you doing now? What's going on now with your life and your career?
Yeah. So I retired, obviously, and went to industry in 2015, went out on my own, started my own company, and we're involved in the missile business. So I'm not too far away from Air Force aviation, naval aviation, and it's kind of been a lifelong passion. And so we're now able to make a difference as a company. It's called Co-Aspire, and we are a prime contractor and currently designing and developing cruise missiles. So it's super exciting, and it's something, I got to do it as an aviator, and now I'm trying to help out this next generation of aviators be successful.
All right. Well, Boog, it's been a pleasure having you on and discussing the Constant Peg program with me. I really appreciate it. Sounds like we got about 3 or 4 other things we could talk about, including your new air launch missile program there. That sounds cool. And maybe we'll get back in touch and talk about waltzing through the Super Mez one more time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Webster.
Thanks, Boog. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Care. You too. Bye.
All right. All right. I really enjoyed talking to Boog today. It was really important to have him provide context for why the program was so important. And I think you can see that based on the fact that his air wing, in fact, went out and engaged and shot down MiG-23s. So you can see where things are linked up between training and actual operations. Also, since I don't really know who was the Rio involved in this event, I'm glad to have Boog on to represent the Rios out there in the F-14 community. Right now I got 2 things to do. One's a bit of cleanup, and the other is a little piece of show and tell. So something to clean up, I did mention when I was doing the modeling that dropping the flaps was a prohibited maneuver. As I've done a little more research, taking a look at the NATOPS manual, I did find out that there are pieces of it that are prohibited. It's more like limitations. So you're limited to 200 knots, 2 Gs, 45 degrees angle of bank, and you're not allowed to shoot a sidewinder missile because that would burn a hole in your flap. However, where it does come into a problem is if you're deployed and out on the ship, and you're probably going to have an SOP that prohibits dropping the main flaps during fighting and maneuvering. The reason being, you can end up with a flat side lockout, and then the wings are stuck. So once you land on the ship, you're going to be that Tomcat out there with the wings out, taking up way too much room on the flight deck, and that's going to cause some troubles. Secondly, I've got a little piece of show and tell for you here. What I've got here is a dummy 22mm round, the kind that would flow through a M61 Vulcan cannon at a rate of 4,000 to 6,000 rounds per minute. Now, if you can imagine, that doesn't sound like any rat-tat-tat. That sounds like maybe more of an extended burp sound. I'm not going to do that for you, but you can practice it at home. You'll probably get pretty close to what it really sounds like there. This one here, the top end of it would be a high explosive incendiary round if it were the real thing instead of a dummy. And what's that designed to do is making contact with the airplane, it's going to explode. In addition to that, it's going to spread sparks so that it's going to light things on fire. So if you catch a fuel cell or something like that, it's going to create a nice fire out of that. Lastly, my dummy round, I know it's a dummy round because it says dummy on it. And secondly, I took the grinder out in the garage and I did a little work on it. So this one's going to be a little bit modified. My dummy round is actually a bottle opener. Great souvenir. So going forward, it's time to get on with the art process. And as usual, that's usually going to start out with me doing a number of thumbnails and picking the composition I want. That'd be the composition that shows the real moment that I want to produce for the painting, that captures the real feeling of what's happening in this event. So that's what I've done, and let's take a look at that. Well, here's a couple of, let's just say, very rough thumbnails. But as you can see, I've got 4 distinctly different compositions that I'm looking at there. And I'm kind of settling in on either one of the top 2 is where I'm coming from on this. And you can see where I took the framing and just adjusted that to fix how I might want to see it on the canvas. To aid in putting the final composition together, I'm going to use models. You've already saw my thumbnail drawings. Do you think I'm going to be the guy that's going to be able to do the drafting style, descriptive geometry that comes up with the perfect shot? Not me. What I'm going to do is use models. I can take pictures from any angle I want. I can move in and get whatever perspective I want on them as well. Here's an example of one of the models that I've used and how it turned out in the painting. So that's where I'm going to go with this, and we'll take a look at a couple of those pictures and try to finalize the composition for this. All right, so I went ahead and set up my models and I got a couple of decent pictures. We're going to take a look at them in just a minute. One other thing I wanted to talk about, what I find very difficult in depicting multiple aircraft in an aviation scene is the size of the aircraft. What I have set up, my 2 models are about 6 feet apart. And the way I calculated, that represents about 500 to 600 feet. So this is very little time in an aerial engagement where aircraft are that close together. And even when you look at what I have set up here, you'll see just how small my F5 is, going to represent the Mig-21. But you see just how small it is on the canvas. And when you get realizing what real life air combat engagements might look like, you're going to find it very difficult to find a piece of sky where airplanes are that close together, where you could get a good painting of more than one airplane. So anyway, I've depicted it as close as I can, and let's take a look and see how that worked out. So I think the technical terminology for the setup that I've got going on here is probably what you'd call nerdy. It's just plain old nerdy. I can't describe it any other way. But it works. What I've got is a 24 by 36 canvas on the wall back there. And then the models, like I discussed, about 6 feet apart. So what I like about this setup is the F-14 is pretty large. That's what I was going for here. And with the flaps down, that's going to be really obvious that the flaps are down. Kind of what I was driving for in this scene. Also, you just see that the blue line there at tape, that's going to represent the horizon for me. I think placing the horizon at an angle like that creates a more dynamic scene. In addition, it helps me get the full size of the Tomcat in there because I can kind of back it down into that corner there. And you can see in this view that Rookie better knock this fight off quick because he's just about to become the subject of some really good gun camera footage. And in the second view here, you can see we're just a touch earlier. Snort still has a little rudder work to do, a little reversal to make before he's going to align the fuselages and get this gunshot off. But I kind of like how the composition looks. It looks a little more interesting to me to have that other aircraft pointed the other direction. And wish I had a department head meeting I could go to where we could all discuss this and come up with an answer after an hour and a half. But I think I'm just going to have to make a command decision here. Okay, so command decision has been made. No department head meeting is going to be required. So I went ahead and decided to pick that second photo. I kind of like the energy of that one just a little bit better with the aircraft going in opposite directions and just getting ready for that last reversal for the kill. So I'm going to go with that one. At this point, what I generally need to do is make sure I have a good game plan going in for executing this painting. What I want to work on and what I want it to look like and why I'm doing it. I usually do this in a composition book, but today I went ahead and put it on a whiteboard so we can walk through it together. Let's take a look at that. On the left side, the concept, why are we bothering to do this one? I think this is a great story. The Constant Peg story is really a phenomenal piece of history that I'd love to capture a piece of it on this particular painting. So I think it's a great story, and I'm going to go with it because of that reason. What makes this one in particular? F-14 almost always is a great thing to paint. Everybody loves the F-14, but to have an F-14 and a Mig-21 both in the same piece of sky is really unusual. So this is pretty interesting for me and exciting. I think it's going to make a great painting. Specifically, we know something about the tactics, which is great as well, with the flaps being down. Who would normally think of painting an F-14 with full flaps down in an air combat engagement? So this is going to be interesting as well. And the fact that it's a true event with a couple of Navy legends, it just puts it over the top for me. So I'm pretty excited to get started on this one. And just to walk through the process, we've already done a couple of things here. So we got the thumbnails, and we picked a composition. We modeled it as well, utilized photos to pick the geometry that we're going to use. I've morphed a Mig-21 from an F-5 in that photo, and I've prepped a canvas. And now we're going to go ahead and do the transfer of aircraft to the canvas there. And what I intend to do to accomplish that is going to be, I've blown up the photo that I need to actual canvas size, and I'm going to utilize a carbon paper to transfer. And we'll see that process briefly. After I've done that, the background is going to go on, followed by blocking in the aircraft, detailing the aircraft, and a full cleanup. And with every painting, I'm going to try to work on something that I think I need to work on. So in this painting, what I'm looking at is atmospheric perspective. I want to make sure I get a reasonable foreground, midground, and background. In order to do that, what I'm going to do is desaturate on the way back, less contrast, and go to a little cooler blue as things fade into the horizon. The MiG is going to be another challenge. It is 800 feet or so away from the F-14, so it also needs to have some degree of less detail and desaturation, which is a challenge for me. Because whenever I have an airplane on there, I want to put as much detail in as I can. So I'm going to have to hold back on that a little bit and see if I can make that MiG look like it's in the background a little bit further. All the opportunity for detail is going to come with the F-14, which is why it's up front like that. And down the bottom there, goods and others. It's kind of a fighter pilot debriefing technique there. Goods, obviously, things you want to talk about that did well. Others, well, that just softens the blow instead of calling it bad. I'm going to try to have a professional artist debriefing on that, and we hope to have a segment at the end of this where where that in fact happens. Let's see if we can get someone to do it. All right, it's time to start pushing paint around. Here we go with the high-speed time lapse. So I generally like to do the background first. That way I can get all the blending and whatnot that I want to do on the background and not worry about the object itself. As long as I can see the object through the blending and the paint that spills over, then I can go ahead and bring the object out after. Looks like I blended it out just a little too much. I got a little too much cerulean up into the top there, and I had to go back and roll some phthalo blue back in to darken up the top a little bit. So as I transition on the horizon here, I'm going to bring in a little Payne's Gray and Van Dyke Brown into that lighter sky area to create this background there. Once again, trying to reduce the contrast and create a bit of bluing. That Payne's Gray has some blue in it. I kind of like how the background is turning out here. I've got a little S-turn that's developing here under the wing around what would be Tonopah, and then back out to the right side of the canvas there. I just did a little Google World search, took a look at the terrain out there, and they're somewhat matching. Those dry lake beds on this side of Tonopah are definitely a landmark that we visually used. If you're going to have a significant exhaust, the time to put it in is now, when things are wet. When things are wet, you can mush it around a little bit, get that nice jelly-like consistency. I got it working here. I keep working it bigger and bigger, and eventually I get it where I like it. In keeping with one of my objectives today, I'm going to try to push that horizon line back just a little bit further. So I created a wash with oil gel, Payne's Gray, and a little bit of titanium zinc white, and thinned it out with some medium, and then applied that across that background edge there. I think it worked out pretty well. All right, so the background is complete. I'm right about the 10-hour point on canvas work time. I think it's coming along fairly decent though. At least I don't hate it. So I guess I'm ready to move on. I was dutifully blocking in my F-14, trying to find all the lines that I had transferred over with my carbon transfer process, when it became quite obvious to me that I had a bit of an issue going on with my left wing. When I blew up the image on the printer, it distorted. So lesson learned, blow the image up in Word and then print it out, and you won't get that distortion from the printer. In a short time here, I'm going to shorten that wing up and reduce the size of that flap a bit, and that'll be corrected. We do also have a little bit of a parallax going on based on where my camera is. So even further down the road when you look at it, you might think the wing's a little large, but it just has to do with the camera position. Well, I was on my way down to training in Dallas, and I was inspired by true life. As we were coming into land there, I saw the spoilers deploy, and as they came off, they made a really nice shadow out over the flap. And even with that, there was a lot of light that shined through between the spoilers. I thought that was a really cool effect, so I wanted to make sure I included that in this painting. You might be wondering what the heck I'm painting here. These are called airbags, and what they do is inflate with high pressure air so that when the wings are, when the flaps are up, they won't go back with the flaps down like that. When the flaps are up and the wing starts sweeping back over top of the fuselage, those airbags will give it a soft rub instead of a hard digging rub. That's what happened if those airbags weren't there. I thought that was a little bit interesting when I first started flying the airplane. If not a little hokey, I was kind of wondering. And then secondly, this airplane did also have a yaw string, and I thought that was a little confusing too. Definitely need to do some fixing on these TF30 nozzles, but I'll continue working on these a couple more times as I go.
Obviously, I can see that things aren't working too well, but there's always more paint. You can always fix it. Well, I finally got a chance to start working on the co-star of this project. The Mig-21, I was having trouble with the size and a little bit with the angle just to get it where I wanted it to be. Initially, when I took it from my previous photos and stuck it on there, it was just too big. Whether the photo looked good or not, it didn't matter. Once I got it on the canvas, it wasn't working. So I had to reduce the size, and as I did that, I kept adjusting the angle that it was flying at as well. The other thing I wanted to mention was back earlier when I did the background, I wanted to make sure that I had a fairly clean canvas underneath the Mig-21. Otherwise, any brush lines or brush strokes would be showing through, and that would really not work well for the Mig-21. So I had to clean that piece of the canvas up, make sure it was smooth. All right, things are really moving now. I'm back working on the big fighter. Did some cockpit detail, got the Rio grabbing the grab bar up there, make it more realistic. A lot of details coming in, the roundel star. Or if I could possibly do them on the first try, that'd be really nice, but it's an iterative process for me. A lot of cleaning it up over and over, letting it dry, cleaning it up. But as the details are coming in the airplane, things are really coming together and just starting to shape up real nice. And here's where it starts getting fun. There's 1,000 ways to depict the afterburning exhaust coming out of an airplane. You got your diamonds, your rings, and your sheer white hot orange and yellow flames pouring out the back. Today I'm going to go with the heat distortion. Then I'm also going to include the irregular flame balls. And I just might patent that. The Mig-21 is also over there slugging it out an afterburner. So he's going to get a treatment as well. I'm going with a couple rings, and it's a little smokier motor, so I'm going to put a little exhaust out there as well. As we talked about, I'm working on a stretch canvas here. As you can see, when I place my hand on the canvas, I do get a lot of bounce there. A lot of people paint on canvas mounted on board to prevent that bounce from happening. In my case, I tend to use a maul stick quite a bit, and you can see there I'm using it, which is just a slightly modified yardstick. I love this green-gray camouflage paint scheme. It's looking real nice. So at this point, I've done a lot of little detail work and quite a bit of cleanup in the areas that needed a little bit of cleanup. And I think I like how the product's turned out here, though. We got Snort there in his F-14A, got his full booted left rudder in. He'll be reversing in just a second here. And Rookie up there, he's got nowhere to go. He's stuck on the floor of the hard deck. It's just gonna be a short time before this is all over.
All right, well, here we are at the debrief section. And I know I promised to find you a professional artist to debrief me on my art, try to give me some finer points and for improvements. But unfortunately, that fell through. While I'll continue to look for a human to conduct that debrief portion in future projects, I think you'll find what I did today to be very interesting, eye-opening, maybe even a bit horrifying. I uploaded my painting to ChatGPT and asked it the following question. I want this painting evaluated as a professional artist would do. Value, movement, depth, color. The elements that are good, I want pointed out and noted as good. The elements that are bad should be listed as others. And then this is what I got in response. This is the preamble to the debrief. Of note, On its own initiative, it added a few specific items that it thought would be important to critique. The response kind of blew me away. It did exactly what I asked for in Goods and Others format. It showed that it had a clear understanding, if not an enhanced understanding, of what I was looking for. It's pretty fascinating. It gave me 7 goods, thank you for the ego massage, and 5 others. While I was reading them, I definitely wandered back and forth between, where's the man behind the curtain? And oh, it's a machine. I'll pull up a few of the comments here. Movement. Excellent sense of dynamic action. The afterburners, missile trails, angle of ascent, and even the tilt of the horizon suggests intense energy and high-speed movement. Sounds very professional, but there were no missile trails. Composition, balanced and engaging. The planes are placed using rule of thirds naturally, and the directional elements, smoke, missile trail, afterburners, keep the viewer's eye moving through the scene without getting stuck. Again, this sounds very artistic, but there are no missile trails. And like I said, I'm back and forth between man behind the curtain and machine. And just one more of the goods, craftsmanship, highly polished technical rendering. The mechanical details of the F-14 are extremely accurate and believable. Surface textures, panel lines, and lighting are handled with professional precision. Well, it called out an F-14. I guess it knows its airplanes. And now into the others portion of the debrief. This is the more important part, as I keep trying to improve in my craft. At the end of the ChatGPT evaluation, Chat asked me if I wanted to see a revised, marked up version of my painting. How could I say no? So I did that, and let's take a look. Here's a brief look at the tally sheet, and now here's Chat's revision of the painting. In the first critique item, the shaded areas on the aircraft tended toward flat gray. Slight cool or warm shifts in shadow color could add vibrancy and realism. Here's their vision, and now here's mine. The critique is specific and actionable, and while I don't really like how his revision came out, I think I could take his comments on board. The next point was atmospheric perspective. Could exaggerate atmospheric haze more in the far distance. Could be slightly more blued out or desaturated. Well, as this was a focus point for me, I thought I'd given enough attention to it. I don't think I agree that more atmospheric perspective was necessary on this one. And then there's sky variation. Sky texture is a little uniform. The clouds are nicely painted, but could use slightly more tonal variation and layering to enhance realism. I'm going to say I think I agree with this one. My upper left area was something I was looking at as well. Maybe there is a man behind the curtain. And now there's minor detailing on distant aircraft. Its pose could benefit from a touch of more dynamic foreshortening. If anybody knows what that is, please just let me know. I'm just going to have to agree to disagree on this one. And I'm now thinking, definitely a machine. And then there's the afterburner flames. Afterburner trails could use slightly more transparency or color shift. Well, I can't say I don't like what Chat did, but I guess he has never experienced the irregular flame balls like I have. That's the kind of nuance you can't get from millions of chatbots. Maybe a little groupthink going on down at the data farm. Something to think about, people. His doesn't look bad, but it has no signature character. This is going to be another disagree. In summary, Chat laid it on pretty thick. Overall, this painting is highly accomplished both technically and artistically. It communicates energy, technical prowess, and atmosphere very well. ... Well, Chat, if you say so. Sounds good to me. To close this debrief section out, I score ChatGPT's evaluation as 2 usefuls and 3 I disagrees. Well, all in all, that was pretty enlightening. ChatGPT produced a far better evaluation than I thought he would. And he demonstrated a significant understanding of actually what was going on in the painting. That was pretty impressive. But there were a few chinks in the armor, as Ed pointed out. So I don't see ChatGPT replacing a professional artist anytime soon. And I am going to redouble my efforts to get a professional for the debrief in my next video. And I did figure out what dynamic foreshortening is. All right, that's about a wrap on this project. I'd like to add one more thing. Both of the pilots depicted in this have passed in recent years. And I just hope that I was able to show them in a light that is befitting of their legacy. I'd like to add one more thing. Air Force, this is your Top Gun. It's got great characters. It's super patriotic. And if you need to, you can finish it out with a couple of Navy F-14s taking out some Libyan Mig-23s. You make terrible movies. This is it. Hollywood, help them out. I'd love to see this on the big screen. And for Brush for Flight, I hope to see you next time.